We're talking with one of the, I would consider, top up and coming outdoor communicators in America. Her name is Serena Juchnowski. She's from Ohio. And if you read Deer and Deer Hunting, you've probably already seen her byline. But she is everywhere. Now, I'm going to make you sit there uncomfortably, Serena, while I give our listeners and viewers just a brief overview. Serena is a rifle person. I'm not going to say a rifleman. She's earned her master classification in high power service rifle and has a distinguished rifleman's badge from the NRA.
Actually from the CMP.
CMP, and you're going to explain that because I don't know what that means.
Okay.
She's an award-winning writer. She's been a full-time freelancer for 4 years, and you can tell she's young. She's in her 20s. She basically just started this on her own. I'm going to leave it that, but she's a member. I'm going to just add this. She's a member of the Professional Outdoor Media Association, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, the Outdoor Writers Association of America, Southeastern Outdoor Press Association, COPA, I always call it, and the Outdoor Writers of Ohio. Welcome, Serena.
Thank you. Also a glow as of last year.
Oh, so you've got them all, you know.
Yes, I have them all pretty much. Yes.
So how did you, let's just start there. We're going to get into your gun and your shooting background and your hunting background, but how did you at such a young age decide this is what I want to do? I want to be a communicator full time.
Complete accident. I never imagined this is where I was going to be. Growing up, I always loved writing. I loved photography. I wasn't too much into the outdoors. I mean, my family would always go hiking. My dad was an avid trapper and hunter. He'd come home with stuff and I'd be super excited, but I never really thought about doing it myself. And everyone said, "Oh, you can't make any money as a writer. You can't do this." And we take those career tests in school and I'd always get pegged as like artist or writer. And I'm like, man, I am gonna fail in life, one of those things. And I decided I wanted to be a historian because I love history. I've done a lot of work with my local historical society, and it actually happened by complete accident. I was desperately applying for scholarships for college, and I had joined a junior rifle team in high school. That all kind of happened by accident too. I didn't start shooting really until I was in eighth grade, ninth grade. One of my dad's mentors, Chuck Malone, came over with a 22 and asked if I was interested in shooting it, or my sister was. And I had shot BB guns before and I didn't really like them because I wasn't strong enough to pump them when I was like 7. So I was like, if I have to pump this, I am not touching this thing. And they're like, no, 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 you just do this and do this. And found out I had some natural ability and started doing that. And through this whole process, met a bunch of kids around my age. I was on a rifle team with all guys, and they all went hunting in the fall. They'd all disappear from the program. And I was like, wait a minute, I want to go, even though dad had invited me before and I didn't have that much interest, but it really took having peers around my age. So I went deer hunting for the first time when I was 16. And then that like next year after that, I was applying for scholarships and I found one through the National Wild Turkey Federation. And it was about conservation. I was like, I have never hunted turkey. I don't know anything about turkey at all, but I'm going to apply for the scholarship. So I literally signed up to be a member of the NWTF the week before the application was due, put in the application and didn't really think about it. And I got a call from a man named Gene Goodwin, who is a former president of the NWTF. He's since passed, which is really sad, but he put on a program called the Ohio Youth Partnership Hunt. And I didn't even realize that I was applying for it when I applied for the scholarship. So he called me with this invitation, and they took the top 10 kids in Ohio who had applied for the local NWTF scholarship on an expense paid turkey hunt. And there I met Brett Berry and Josh Grossenbacher and some people who are really well known in the turkey hunting world. And I was hunting with Brett Berry, and I was like, I don't understand how you hunt so much. Once you reach your limit, how are you still able to go hunting? And he said, well, I take writers out. Like, what do you mean you take writers out? I'm thinking, looking at the classics, I'm thinking Oscar Wilde, all of these really old stuff. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So he proceeds to explain it to me. And a couple days after the hunt, I got an email by an outdoor writer named John Phillips. People call him Bubba.
Yeah, I know
and
Bubba.
he wanted permission to use my photo. He was doing interviews of all of Mossy Oak's pro staffers, which included Brett Barry, who was my guide. And I had the fate of asking, "What do you do? What is an outdoor writer?" And he said, "Call me," and wrote down his phone number. I'm like, "Mom, this random guy from Alabama wants me to call him." My mom's like, "Well, you can always hang up." I was 17, 18. So I called him and he gave me a whole list of things and said, "Do this, do this, do this, join POMA, call me back in 6 months." I said, "All right, I guess this is what I'm doing now." I had been doing a little bit of writing for a magazine called Junior Shooters, just for fun. It was pretty much kind of like a volunteer thing. And John taught me how to market myself and how to write queries. Told me I needed to come to SHOT Show. That's where I met you. And one thing led to another. And while I was in college looking towards my history degree, I realized that the political sentiment of the colleges was not something I agreed with. And I was being told essentially they were presenting one side of history instead of both. And I realized that I could not endure 4, 8, 12 years of that. And I really loved everything that I had started doing just for fun, essentially, and to make extra money while I was trying to go to school, and jumped into it full time. So I've I worked for American Handgun Air and Guns magazine for a little while, but went back to full freelance. So I've been freelancing in the outdoor industry for the past 4 years.
4 years. And, she said that so succinctly. One thing I want you to expand on, Serena, is,
Yeah.
you know, just starting out. Let's turn the clock back 4 years. How was that? I mean, okay, you're fresh out of college. You're querying guys that are twice your age who've been in a male-dominated industry forever. Explain how difficult that was to even get your foot in the door.
It's still honestly difficult at times. So I actually started while I was in college. I started writing professionally in the industry when I was 19 years old. So a lot of that was limiting, especially since I've been more of a gun writer coming from the competitive shooting world, that sometimes people thought, this was the only thing I could do. But one of the things that John taught me is you can use writing to learn about anything, and that you can interview as many different people as you can reach, really. So I've used that to learn a lot of different things, and it's really been intimidating. So a lot of the number one question I've been asked is, how is it being a woman in a male dominated industry? And honestly, a lot of women have paved the way for me where people have been really receptive. The number one issue I've had is being young, because people assume that I don't know anything, or that I'm, one of the stereotypical kids that can only be on their phone. Like, for example, one of the issues I've had is I'm a diabetic. I became a diabetic when I was 20, which is, it's hard, especially when I go hunting and shooting. I have to have different allowances, but I have a meter on my phone, and I had to get a smartwatch in order to check my blood sugar, because when I was at trade shows and meetings, people would assume automatically that because I pulled out my phone for a medical necessity, that I was on social media and I was doing this or doing that. And it's been something that really had to prove myself, and I still am. Luckily, Dan, I really appreciate your kind words. It means a lot to me. I've been working really, really hard to form my own brand and prove myself and continue to learn as many things as I can, because I don't have 30, 40, 50 years of experience, because I haven't had the ability to have that.
Right. And I'm not just saying this to, I mean it. What you've done, and I would like to use this moment for anybody out there. Trust me, I've been in this job for 28 years. So I've been in this job longer than you've been alive. And I've had so many young guys come up to me over the years. I want to be I want to be you. I want to do what you do. And what I told them, because Bubba and I are good friends, and we go a long way back. And Bubba took me underneath his wing. But to just get my foot in the door here, I did what you did. And most people have. And I think any occupation, any walk of life. But, you got to pay your dues. You have to work hard, and the road is going to be tough. And people are going to tell you you're too young, You don't know what you're talking about. In my cases, you're not killing enough big deer, and all this kind of stuff. And but the fundamentals and that determination, I would say congratulations, number one, but number two, don't give up, because it's never going to be easy, but I really admire what you are doing and how you're approaching it. And I know that you've leaned on a lot of people already in this industry, which you should. I know that you've been in touch with Linda Powell at Mossberg, and I know you've been in touch with Karen Leto at Hunter Communications, and that's the type of attitude I think that gets you places. But that all being said, your expertise is already there. I mean, you've already proven yourself as a competitive shooter, which I think is pretty cool. And now you are transitioning that to hunting. So let's talk about, you told me off air that you're going to nationals here pretty soon.
Yes.
What does that all involve?
So I compete in a couple different disciplines, but my main discipline is high power service rifle. And I would like to also thank some sponsors I have that make competing possible, which is Sierra Bullets, Kelby's Actions, and Krieger Barrels. So as part of this, we shoot 200, 300, and 600 yards with an AR-15. Um, we have shooting coats, jackets, the whole thing. People think we're crazy because we go and lay out in the sun and do this, but it's a really, really old discipline with military roots. And what I've done is by competing in certain matches, I've earned the Distinguished Rifleman's Badge, which is the highest honor for marksmanship commissioned by the US government to civilians. So this is going back to the 1800s. It's a really big tradition. So luckily for me, the nationals are held every year at Camp Perry, Ohio. So I'll be there for 2 weeks competing with people from all over the country. We used to get some people from around the world before COVID, so now it's a little bit more limited, especially with gas prices and things like that. But we still get a little bit over 1,000 people who usually come out for this. And it's been a really enjoyable experience learning to shoot, learning marksmanship, learning about myself through the whole process. So I really encourage a lot of women, kids, really anybody to get involved. I also compete in long range Palma, which is where Kelby's comes in. That is 800, 900, 1,000 yards,
Wow.
all iron sights, all prone shooting.
Wow.
I should have mentioned that service rifle is 200 yards standing and sitting, and then 300 and 600 yards are prone. And then I also do small bore silhouette, which is all offhand shooting, no shooting coats or anything like that. 40, 60, 77, and 100 yards at small steel silhouettes. And I've gotten into PCP air guns. So I really, really love shooting. I love learning more about firearms. I've been getting into pistols. I just earned my first 4 points towards my pistol distinguished badge last week, actually, at Camp Perry for the Pistol Nationals.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So, that is kind of your forte, is that the iron sight thing, especially 1,000 yards. I can't see through a high-powered scope at that distance. But how did you transition now? I know that you weren't always a hunter. How did you transition from that type of shooting to now hunting?
So that's kind of a funny story, and I'm going to back up a little bit. So my dad had always hunted, and I always loved, I remember he'd call and say, I'm coming home with this doe or this buck, and I'd get all excited and go out there and take pictures. And when I was in middle school and high school, I'd go to school and tell my friends about it. And they were like, oh, that's terrible, or that's gross, or I could never do that. And over time, I convinced myself that I was never going to be able to do it. And when I was in third grade, my dad brought hunter education books home, and I was a straight A student, like super nerdy. I mean, I was in the Math Honor Society, and I'm not that great at math, stuff like that. And I looked at the book and thought, oh my God, I'm going to fail this exam. And I didn't even end up trying it. So then when I was 16 and all the guys on my team went hunting, I told my dad, I want to go hunting 3 days before youth gun season opened. So I didn't really have a whole ton of experience. And he's really been mentoring me over the years of, where do you shoot a deer, the ethics behind hunting, how do you dress, how do you approach all of these? And I covered a lot of that in an article I did for you about lessons that I learned from my dad.
Yep.
Because we don't always get along when we're shooting necessarily, because he competes with me too, but in the woods, it's completely different. I don't really know how to explain it. So for me, a lot of the marksmanship skills that I have translated into making a good and ethical shot on animals. A lot of the things that I've been learning is how do they move? How do they interact? How do you make a choice of what to shoot, when to shoot, all of those different things. So a lot of the background that I'm still learning about is, okay, if I'm going to go out by myself, how do I look for sign? How do I find where they are? How do I determine the best place to set up? Where the shooting is actually a very small part of it. And when I started with a 357 Max, I realized I could only hunt a week or so in Ohio during gun season, and that was the only time I could go hunting. So the only bow that my dad had, and crossbows are legal for archery season in Ohio, was a crossbow that I could use because I wasn't strong enough to use any of his compounds. And that has been a really good tool for me, especially not being able to practice a ton during the year because of all the other things that I'm doing. It is so similar to a firearm as far as having a trigger on it and everything else that it all carries over. And I really think that, a lot of people make the arguments of, oh, it's not real hunting, but it's still getting you out there. And I think it's great, especially for people like me who are coming with a marksmanship background, to adapt and start learning more about hunting, whether it's deer or turkey or something else, and being able to not have too much coming at you at once. So this year, actually, I just got a compound and I'm going to be learning how to use that.
Awesome.
So it's taking me one step at a time, moving towards essentially what a lot of people have started out with.
That is awesome. I'm going to ask you, you opened up a kind of a can of worms there of a lot of topics I want to cover, but what did you find, and you did allude to them, but what was different / difficult / challenging? Okay, you're knocking metal gongs at 1,000 yards, and now you're shooting at a deer. What did you find what's the most difficult thing for you to, I guess, transition from being a competitive shooter to a hunter?
So first I'll say I don't really shoot steel gongs. We shoot targets, paper targets. That way nobody else gets mad at me.
That's showing my ignorance on that. So go ahead.
It's all good. And I think the biggest thing is the worry of making sure, because I'm always trying to hit an X-ring, which is usually the center of the target, always the center of the target, but typically pretty small compared to whatever else it's not like a paper plate and you're like, oh man, I just hit this. You're trying to be as accurate as possible. So knowing where to hit the animal is the biggest thing. And I've always been really concerned about making sure that it's an ethical kill. So I guess the biggest thing is knowing that if you mess up, you don't just have another shot. You have one chance to make this right. And you have one chance to essentially, if you don't make that shot correctly, there are consequences besides losing 10 points. It's not just a score. It's not just a competition. This is real life. You're dealing with another life that you have to be respectful of.
Man. Hey, we know what that sound means. It means we're going to take a break to thank one of our sponsors. Today's episode of Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Easton Archery and the all-new 5mm Autumn Orange FMJ. Celebrating Easton's 100 years in archery, the 5mm Autumn Orange FMJ is a fresh take on an old favorite, featuring Easton's exclusive FMJ arrow technology and finished with the classic Easton Autumn Orange anodized finish. This limited edition offering gives archers a modern arrow with a throwback nostalgia to arrows they may have never put in their quiver before. I did. I had those original Autumn Oranges when I was younger. These are available in 4 popular sizes: 250s, 300s, 340s, and 400 spines. And it also includes hit inserts and 5mm X-Nox installed. Very, very, very cool. I will be shooting these arrows in that throwback Autumn Orange while hunting for Deer and Deer Hunting TV this year on our Pursuit Channel shows. You might already know I'm a big fan of the FMJ line. To begin with, these arrows are skinny, they're straight, and they pack a punch. My particular setup, those arrows are 11.3 grains per inch. Plenty enough power I'm getting there on downrange kinetic energy, even though I'm only shooting 54 pounds. This adds up to a mighty wallop downrange on whitetails. Check them out at your nearest Easton Arrow dealer or visit eastonarchery.com for more information. Okay, Serena, so you talked about I just sounded like Brad Fence in there. No offense, Brad. Brad's in Canada. And they always tell me I'm either from Canada or from Wisconsin. I'm like, you are correct. I'm from Wisconsin.
Yep,
That's some
they can help.
light humor there. The piece you did for us, this is it right here. This was in the April issue of that wasn't this year, was it?
No.
That was last year. April issue. It was the 350 Legend and the 357 Max. You just
Yep.
talked about that. Now, explain to everyone, what is this big trend with straight wall cartridges, and how do those two calibers come into play?
So what a lot of people don't realize is, especially working in the gun industry now, I have a lot of people that are like, oh, why don't you use a 6.5 Creedmoor or this or that? And Ohio's limited to straight wall cartridges. And only a couple years ago did they start allowing like pistol caliber cartridges. So basically that means that you can't have a bottleneck on your case. It has to stop straight. It can't have any kind of, I don't know how to describe it other than a bottleneck. It'd be easier with a picture. I'm going to assume everybody knows what that means.
Yep.
But that means that you're limited on what you're able to use. So for me, when I first started, my dad pretty much made the choice, and I fell in love with the choice that he made, is a 357 Max. And everybody would say, oh, that's a 357 mag. And I was like, no, actually, it's a 357 Max. So it's an entirely not, it's based off the 357 mag cartridge, but it's really only fired out of single shots. It came around in the 80s as a revolver cartridge, and it did not work with revolvers very well. So people started saying, oh, this is a terrible caliber. It doesn't work. But when you put it in a single shot, like my Thompson Center Contender, it's fantastic. It works great. One of the reasons people don't use it is because it's not commercially produced. There's only one place that I know of, Steinle Ammunition in Twinsburg, Ohio, that even produces it for you to buy. Otherwise, you have to reload it, and that adds a whole nother dynamic. So I've grown up around people who reload. Chuck, who taught me to shoot, taught my dad. I've been learning how to reload. So that wasn't an issue for us. And it's actually beneficial for people who are looking to tailor around to their firearm, because they can specifically find the best load that works for what they want and get more power out of it. A 350 Legend came around, I believe, in 2019. Winchester announced it at SHOT Show. And the reason that was a big deal is it's essentially, I called it a fraternal twin to the 357 Max, because it is the closest commercially available caliber to that. And the reason it revolutionized straight wall cartridges for the masses is because no longer do people have to try to reload to get a lighter recoil caliber that could still ethically take deer size game out to about 250 yards. It has a .355 bullet instead of .357 or .358, which allowed Winchester to load them on 9mm machines. But the biggest thing is that now, since it's based off of a 223-556 cartridge instead of a 357 mag, it can be used out of AR platform rifles. So before, where anyone in a straight wall state was pretty limited, now people that are smaller framed or want something without as much recoil as, say, a 450 Bushmaster or a 4570, you have the options of, sorry, I totally blanked.
Dog barking.
Let me start back. Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. Let me start over somewhere in the middle there. Trying to think of where the best place to do that. I'm so sorry about him.
No, that's okay. Because to me, it's fascinating stuff, and it's something like your column is one of those columns that I have to read like I have to read it once.
Oh, yeah.
And then I've got to read it like 3 times because you've got so much information in there. I can tell you're a walking encyclopedia on this stuff. And
I don't know as much as people who are way older than me do, but I've been very fortunate that I've been able to take in as much knowledge as I have.
But what you're saying is now I know Ohio is that way. I believe you can use them in Illinois. These states that were previously like shotgun only, that has really opened up some doors, hasn't it?
Yes, it's really opened up a lot of doors in a lot of ways for a lot of people, especially for youth shooters, youth hunters, women. because it has enough power, but it's not overwhelming. Like I said, it's not a 450 Bushmaster, and the reason that I love the 357 Max is, well, I shot my first deer with it and it went down immediately. Like, I did not have the initial first experience of having to track a deer, and I thought that's what happened every time, which was actually not the case. But after I watched that, I was very, very confident in the cartridge and its ability. And the 350 Legend, as I started saying earlier, really allowed a lot more platforms and made it commercially available. So, especially in Ohio, 350 Legend has become an absolutely hugely popular deer cartridge. I mean, you see it on all the shelves. Almost everyone, even though they didn't need to, went out and bought a 350 Legend, because now you can shoot deer with an AR platform if you choose. Now you can have more than one shot in the gun. You can have a couple. I'm trying to remember what the actual regulations say, but you can have a magazine fed bolt gun in a lighter recoiling caliber, where before, if you wanted to shoot something super similar, you were limited to 357 mag, or if you wanted more power, which is closer to what the 350 Legend is, 357 max, which you had to reload. So you weren't given a lot of options, and you can only really use that in a single shot.
Do you think that's going to replace shotgun slugs altogether in these states like Ohio?
I honestly don't know anybody who uses shotgun slugs anymore. Most people use like a 4570 or 444. You can't use 3030 in Ohio. I know that's bigger in Pennsylvania, but most people have really turned to that 350 Legend.
One thing that with that 357 now, JJ probably he's going to box my ears for not remembering, but I'm pretty sure I used a 357 mag out of a lever action. The ones that you're talking about, they don't play well out of a lever action, right? Like the 350, like the 357 Max and the 350 Legend.
So 357 Max is based off the 357 mag cartridge, but it won't fit in a 357 mag rifle. A
Okay.
357 mag will fit in a 357 Max barrel. So you can't interchange them.
Right. But as far as just, I'm talking
It's a
about this,
different
those
cartridge.
straight wall cartridges, they're not really for shooting out of like a lever action gun, are they? Because you had mentioned they're more like single shot rifles.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Tell me about this article right there. There's that. There's my Canadian accent again. There about. Tell me about this article here that you won an award for, or several awards for. It appeared in Deer and Deer Hunting, the February 2021 edition. It was called "It's Different for Girls." Tell us
Yeah.
about the premise of that article and how it all came together.
So that was a really, really important piece for me to write. And basically, what I did is I was inspired by Christine Houtman's Why Women Hunt book. I met Christine at a CIOPA conference a couple years ago. And so I interviewed her and Linda Powell, a couple other women that I know in the industry, as well as reached out to people on social media and wanted to find out why do women hunt? Why are these numbers that you see on statistics? Why are there more women hunters? I don't think it's because they're making more pink rifles. Most of us can't stand that anyway. But so I was able to basically talk to a lot of people and figure out not only why they hunted, but how they became involved. And a lot of women, including myself, have begun hunting because they have a male mentor in their life, whether it be a dad, boyfriend, father, like grandfather, etc. And one thing I didn't think about is when women get divorced, or if they break up with their boyfriend, sometimes they don't have any resources to continue hunting and continue learning, so they stop, which is where a whole bunch of, whether it's Facebook groups, whether it's different organizations, people getting together, kind of the same thing if you see women learning self-defense together to continue that education process. So as part of that article, I looked into a lot of statistics. I can't remember all of them right now, but it was most popular for women to hunt with a rifle. Shotgun was near the end of the list. Muzzleloaders were near the end of the list. But near the top of reasons that I found that women hunted was for a sense of confidence, being able to feed their family with healthy, natural meat, and learning a whole lot more about themselves. So basically, that's something that I've found in shooting for me as well as hunting is being able to learn more about who I am as a person, how I connect with nature, being able to feel self-sufficient, not feel like I'm dependent upon anything or anyone, even though I'm still learning. I'm not going to pretend to be Rambo. I'm not. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but basically explored talking to a lot of different people, the reasons behind, and those were what we found.
That's excellent, and what I was hoping that you would explain. Again, if you guys want to read that, I'm not sure if we have that on our website yet, but it was called "It's Different for Girls: Hunting's Benefits Extend Far Beyond the Harvest." Well, I think that's going to be all for today, Serena. I would love to have you back because, like I said, you are a wealth of knowledge and an inspiration for a lot of younger hunters and outdoor communicators. So good luck at nationals because I know that's coming up, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you need the good luck, but we're gonna offer.
I'm gonna take it. I'm I've got all kinds of ammo to load and everything else, so I'll definitely take as much luck as I can get.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, that's it for another episode. Man, that was awesome. Her name is Serena Juchnowski. Just look her up on Facebook, Instagram. She's all over the place. And those articles, we'll have them on our website if they're not already up there. For Serena, I am Dan Schmidt. This is Deer Talk Now. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next time. The Deer Talk Now podcast is brought to you by CuddyLink cell cameras. Up to 24 cameras, one cell plan, and as low as $10 per month. 10-point crossbows. The fastest crossbows in the world. Wildlife Research Center's Scent Killer Gold. Apply it, dry it, and go hunt. Full range hanging systems. The best way to display your shoulder mount trophies. Hunt Stand. The #1 hunting and land management app. And Traditions Firearms. Feel the difference.